Good morning, Glue Troopers. So, this morning I got up and thought about what to chat about today, and I hopped on the YouTube for a minute to just watch a few videos as I woke up, and I saw some stuff that thought, oh, that's interesting. And somebody had sent me an email about cutting the scallops on the GB, and they had recommended that I use a circle cutter from, I think it was Flexi was the company. I've got one, and it's about the same size. Looks like the gap closes as much as the one on the Flexi model. It's about as tight a circle as you can cut. So that's probably, that's a possibility. Might hand do it, might use that. But it got me thinking about the special tools. You know, there are a lot of special tools, and usually fairly expensive ones for building kit models. And I usually eschew buying expensive purpose-built tools. I buy relatively, cheap tweezers and stuff, and of course the pen vise is the pen vise. But most of the things that I've been hesitant to buy specialty tools that like to be replaced. Now, I did finally break down a while back and get a sprue cutter. Definitely worth it. They're kind of silly expensive, but they're worth it. I made the mistake of cutting some things made out of metal with this, like little wires and things, which this was not made for. It's made for cutting sprue on plastic. But like an idiot, I was like, cutter's a cutter, clip that wire, and now I got a nice little hole in there where it bent the metal, because that wasn't what this was made for. So this still works, but I'll probably pick up a second one and take better care of it. And one of the things that kind of cracked me up is they had something they called a putty spatula, and it was nothing but a metal arm with a little flat blade on it. I'm like, okay, that I'm not going to pay $9 for, because that's, find a 30-cent screwdriver and I've got the same thing. But with that exception, I realized a lot of the equipment they make, you can buy in an arts and crafts store maybe for a little bit less if it's not labeled model. The minute it's labeled a model tool, it's like labeling something a boat part or an airplane part. It just gets more expensive. So kind of makes me wonder, question of the day, what is the specialty tool you either both or that you best, like, I'm glad I got that, it's the one you most are glad you bought, or the one you bought, oh, this is an absolute waste of money. One of my big things right now is I bought this air compressor they use for the spray gun at Harbor Freight, and it was on sale for like $49. Now they go for over $100. So after using it for several years, the motor died. It literally slung a rod, and the electric motor I took it all apart, could not be fixed. And I realized I had this old compressor motor from before. Now, that one did, the old one didn't have a tank. It was a chick, and you were spraying, so you would get the little spurts as the motor would run. But I figured, wait a minute, the only thing that motor didn't have was an air tank. Well, now I got a perfectly good air tank, so I jury-rigged the old pump onto the air tank, and it worked. Now, of course, it wasn't made for it. The curved piece of copper tubing I have makes for an awkward fit. I've got a little air leak in the gap, but it still pressurizes the tank, and my spray comes out of the tank, and I still get a smooth spray. So I'm like, I know it's an ad hoc system, but it works, so I've been hesitant to replace it. But then I asked myself, maybe I should replace it. I mean, they're not that expensive. I see the little spray systems that they have that are made specifically for model building, and I look at those and I'm underwhelmed, and they're very expensive. I'm like, that just doesn't seem like a good deal. Maybe I should just go get another one of these tanks. Probably about $150 now. But I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. The system I've got's working, and I'm kind of like, well, it's working, why replace it? So that kind of brings up the question of the day. Should you replace something that you can replace because there's something better out there, or if it's good enough, should you just go ahead, focus on other things and leave it alone? It's working, and when it finally craps out, then I'll go get another one. And you run into those kinds of little questions. So one of the other things I saw on the YouTube today was I happened to stumble onto a couple of videos of home builders building their own airplanes. One guy in France built this beautiful Newport 28 from a kit that had like an aluminum airframe, very modern materials, but once it was all done, it looked like an original. He even put a radial engine on it, a Rotax, but he had 2 engine failures in less than 200 hours of flying, one of which did cause the forced landing, caused some damage to the plane. And then another guy who built an American who built a soft-width soft-width triplane, and he made it like the original with the wood and everything, and he thought about how the metal tubing, he had to hand vise it all down to get the aerodynamic shape and all the nightmarish things he had to go through. I have nothing but respect for people who can do something that involved. You see, I grew up with a home-built airplane in our basement from the time I can remember. He had the fuselage mostly done, and I grew up with all the big pieces of plywood with the jigs up against the wall and everything, and I could just, in my earliest memories, remember toddling down there and seeing him work on it. My parents ended up with 7 kids. My dad had 2 jobs. He owned a hardware store. He also started a mini bike manufacturing company, KC Mini Bikes. Then he also ran for city commission and got elected, and he was even mayor pro tem for a while. And so he sold it unfinished. He had the wings that I think were from an Aeronica Champ, and probably a 65 horse Continental engine. I can remember those things like I'm sitting there right now looking at them in our basement for years, because when you're young, those early memories really stick. And I realized that little bit of exposure showed me the commitment it takes to build an airplane. What I'm getting at is that the people who build these airplanes, especially these World War I aircraft that have so much detail work in them, in the rib stitching and riveting, and because some of the more modern kits they use rivets instead of rib stitching, I think. But it is staggering, and of course it takes these people years to build them. And it's got to be something they love doing, because there's certainly no money in it. In fact, it's expensive. And then they come out with these treasures when they're done, and I salute them. And then all of a sudden I don't complain about, the little model that I'm building. I can't get the canopy to fit right. Rah, rah, rah. I spent $9.95 on this. Rah, rah, rah. By the way, that brings up a thought. You ever notice it, and this really applies to me, I don't know if it applies to you guys, I don't want to project. There are some kits that you build and I just feel like gluing the parts on, filing them down, getting a fit, putting some paint on it, decaling it, and putting it on the shelf. Just a nice, fun, low stress build. I'm not worried whether, you can see a seam on it or something, and then you get some of them, you're like, well, I don't want that seam to show, so I'm going to putty that up and sand it down. And by the way, this flexi file or whatever the company is had this little thing you could probably make yourself. In fact, there's a YouTube video on how to make it, but it looks kind of like a metal slingshot with a piece of a strip of sandpaper across it, and you can squeeze it, let it go to flex. But it's for putting on a model and can sand compound curves. Oh, that was kind of neat. I'm going to have to acquire or make one of those. That could come in real handy. Apparently it helps you do that without getting the flat edge. You preserve the shape because you're like a little handheld bandsaw. Anyway, back to then you get models like with the Accurate Miniatures kits. When I was building the Vindicator, I really, partly out of admiration for the sacrifice made by the guys that flew those things at Midway, I really felt like I wanted to do as good a job as I could do. So I took the time to paint every little part and put everything in there and sweat every little detail. And I love looking at it on the shelf. I realize a lot of the details you can't even see, but I know they're there. So I understand that as well. And since I want to do this, like I say, when I do the Edward P51 that Mark gave me, I want to do the same thing. Take my time, slow down, do a real good job. I might order aftermarket decals if it doesn't have the ones I want, or I don't have them in my stash. There are sometimes you just really want to take your time. Now, everybody has got their own standard. I know, like I said, I know some guys, you can hand them the crappiest kit on the earth and they're going to build it like a museum piece, no matter how long it takes. It's in their nature. God bless them. Nothing but respect. When I did the Polara, you know, rigging up the wiring on the Hemi and everything. I wanted to do that because I had a little bit of an emotional attachment to that one. It was special, and it was a gift. But when I'm doing something like this Supermarine racer, I just want a very basic build to look okay on the shelf, but the GB, I want to take the time to do well. By the way, that paint's still a little, it's not really tacky, but if you I can tell it needs a couple of more. I'm going to give it at least 2 days to cure before I touch it. I think one probably should take it in the house, because since it's gotten cold out here, I'm pretty sure that's having an impact on how it's hardening. So I think I'll take that inside where it'll be a little warmer. It's not cold here, but you know, it's, I mean, look, I'm wearing, you know, 2 t-shirts and short sleeves. Anyway, today I'll probably finish the Supermarine, play around a little bit with, maybe do the little car that came with it, and just again, a casual day, nothing heavy duty, and with all we have going on in the real world, I'm afraid the phone's going to be ringing. I'm probably going to get some distractions. I would like to go out and shoot the rocket soon, so just all kinds of stuff, but no schedule. We'll do it when we do it. And anyway, want to thank you guys for tuning in today. Hope you're having a great day, and model on.